what is the ceiling for this team? Because they are now tied as of this recording with Memphis for second in the West. Couple numbers on them before I throw it your way. League's third best net rating since January 9th, 5.6. Milwaukee and Cleveland right behind them. And they're 20-8 during that time. Another little, kind of moving the goalpost framing number for you. Since that 0-4 start, which it's wild to look back on that because I remember vividly thinking, like, man, there was all this messaging in training camp about Mike Brown and the changes he was going to make. It's a new day in Sacramento. And as the guy who's been here forever, as much as I like Mike, you're thinking, oh, it's the same old story. They start 0-4 and you're going, you got to be kidding me. These guys aren't even going to get off the ground floor. Now,
Fred, have you ever seen the movie Major League 2 with Randy Quaid in the bleachers? Like,
yes, I have. It's a terrible movie.
As they're playing well, Randy Quaid is just in the crowd, like, they'll blow it in the playoffs. Like, he's just like sitting there doubting them the entire movie. That's Sam during this Kings season. Like, oh, they'll blow it in the second half tonight. We know they will.
He's not wrong. But now they're going to probably make me regret it. I'm starting to be convinced since that 0-4 start, 40-22, like any way you slice it, like 40-22 is very legit. So, I wrote about Mike Brown today and I honestly, I enjoyed writing it because, and you try not to make too much of little moments during a season, but Mike Brown Thursday night, the Kings beat Fred Katz's New York Knicks. And I'm still programmed because, again, I've been here forever. To my mentality about the Kings is like, I don't want to hear a complaint from you, meaning the Kings, ever if there's a W next to that game. Like, a win is a win is a win. So to see Mike Brown post game go up to the press conference table and use words like embarrassed because the Kings gave up 23 offensive rebounds to the Knicks, to call out Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and say they need to use their voices more and to be better vocal leaders. And then what I decided to do and wrote about today was like, let me go in the locker room and get a sense of, all right, I don't think Mike would have said this publicly if he didn't say it privately first. So talk to Malik Monk, who was a great kind of source on this. Malik says, oh no, he came in and that's what he say. He said we were fucking terrible. And he's right. I agree. Mike wants the best for us. Mike wants us to be perfect. That's why we are where we are. Kevin Herter says, we wouldn't be second in the West if Mike was just telling us how great we are. De'Aaron Fox, that night had a really strong statement that Slater wrote about, saying that Mike Brown makes you believe that you're better than you might actually be. So great things happening, I think, in terms of their chemistry and their culture. And it's paying off because after that Thursday night rant from Mike, they go out to Phoenix, team that they had not beat all year long, give up 7 offensive rebounds and win that game and are looking really good right now. But ceiling wise, what do we think?
Sam, 40-22 with the best offense in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
In the history
did I leave that part
of the
out?
league. Now, part of that is because that we're at the point where every single year, whatever team leads the league in offense is going to have the best offense in the history of the league.
Well, tell me real quick, Fred, is it, 95-96, that season was the first when all of the data was compiled that we can go back to. I mean, how do we see, this is something I should know, but from an offensive rating standpoint, it has puzzled me for a while, like how to historically frame this era and some of these numbers with some of the early 80s, like the old Nuggets teams where, the game was fast, the league was running. Like, can we categorically say best offense in the history of the game, or is there a little bit of an asterisk?
Oh, it's the steroid era for sure.
Right. Yeah,
from offense.
I mean, you can like normalize stuff like how baseball has these stats like down because baseball normalizes stuff so that it's relative to league average. So instead of looking at your OPS, you can look at OPS plus, which is just how much better you are than league average. Your ERA plus, how much better you are than league average, and maybe that's something we can start doing for like offensive and defensive rating and that kind of stuff. How much better and worse you are than league average percentage wise.
Right.
That being said,
King's perspective.
That being said, I watched the Sacramento Kings, and this does not seem like some weird fluky offensive situation. They are an amazing offensive team. People talk about how fast they play. And I think normally when people talk about how fast they play, they're referring to just the general pace of the game, the way we normally talk about speed, where they fast break a lot and they look to run off of defensive rebounds and they look to run off of turnovers and they're always trying to get out into the open court. But their pace, once they get into the half court, is like nonstop. They are just loaded with quick decision makers. It is amazing how much De'Aaron Fox's mind has caught up to his feet this season. He
I
is
like how you
such a
said that.
he's always been fast as hell, and he had that great year under Dave Yeager where the Kings were just running like crazy. But this is different. That was like a frantic. The Kings are going to play fast and they're going to turn it over. And sometimes it's going to look good. And sometimes they're going to fall flat on their face because they're moving too quickly for them to think. And Sabonis is such a quick decision maker and is basically their lead facilitator. Fox has been such a quick decision maker and is insane in fourth quarters. I have no idea how this clutch player of the year voting thing is going to go because it's never happened before. And
I
it's
think
the first
he's
year.
winning it. I mean,
But yeah, it should be Fox. Like, he has been outrageous in fourth quarters this year.
he killed Hart the other night. That game, I'm sure we were all watching.
Yep.
Like
yeah, he
just
did. And
won the
Hart's
game
a
by
good
just
defender.
beating Josh Hart off the dribble like 7 times in the fourth quarter.
And Josh Hart's a good defender who plays unbelievably hard. He had a crossover move on Hart in that game where he went right to left, and he was like, in the mid post and went right to left facing up Hart and got a bucket out of it. Got an M1, I think it was. He's been spectacular this year. He's really just become a wonderful player. The pace that offense plays with, the way they go into the dribble handoffs with Sabonis immediately, and Herter's ability to shoot. Like, they shoot a ton of threes, and they are one of the best inside the arc scoring teams of all time too. Just they're scary and they're exhausting. They're just they're not very good defensively, but they're exhausting.
Since Slater gave me a hard time about being Debbie Downer, like I'll just find Slater. I'll flip it. I'll be Mr. Rose-colored glasses.
Well, like, Randy Quaid at the end of the movie, like Charlie Sheen yells at him and then he's back. And by the end of the movie, I'm back. And he's a huge fan again. So go ahead by the end of the podcast.
Does a world exist where, all right, they hold on to home court in the first round and they somehow survive? I mean, these are some good teams at the bottom half of the West. So that's a big if right there, but they survived the first round. I mean, do they find their way to the conference finals and have a puncher's chance at shocking the world? Or, do we just say, slow down, let's get them in the playoffs and see what happens?
We'll see. I mean, I think a success of a season for them is at this point, you say, get through a round. Like if they got to the second round and gave up a fight, man, that would be a good year one for kind of this, new era for the Kings. But one of the things that's funny, I was talking to somebody before, actually 2 people before the Kings-Knicks game, and they were excited about the Knicks matchup because the Knicks are physical and they are very, among regular season teams across the league, they scout and prep much more than other teams, right? Because who is their head coach? Tom Thibodeau, who treats, every game, kind of like a mini playoff game. And they thought it would be a good test for what their offense might face come playoff time, which is, physical players off the ball, more grappling, the stuff that the early Warriors teams, back in like the early Steph days, when they were on the rise, had to deal with, because suddenly the Steve Kerr flow and movement, it would get wrestled in a physical environment in the playoffs. And I do think, that is awaiting them. I think they've been such a good regular season story and so refreshing to so many people nationwide because they've attacked the regular season with such, focus and ferocity, and every game feels important to them. Once you get to the playoffs, everyone kind of treats it that way and scouts it that way. And I do think their offense might face some bumps in the road personally. And maybe I can be considered a doubter. I don't expect a finals run by the Kings, but I do expect them to learn a lot in the playoffs, and maybe win around, maybe get deeper into the second round, and especially if they add a little bit this offseason, be thought of really well going into next season, learning some lessons.
They can definitely win a playoff series, I think. I don't.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
I think they could definitely win a playoff series. I don't see why not. Especially also, man, Sam, I'm sure you're this way times 100. I cannot wait to see that crowd during an opening playoff series, a game
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Because that's the best vibes team in the NBA. They're just the best vibes team in the league. All the vibes out of there are shooting with the beam up into the sky. They're just incredible vibes all around, right?
I've never been a sucker for a marketing ploy ever in covering this league for almost 20 years. The beam cracks me up and honestly makes me smile every time I see the locals react to it. And this will be, you know, if we, who knows, maybe we have a listener who is a journalist, not of the sports variety. If anybody more of like the Rolling Stone type wants like an interesting angle, just come hang out and watch people watch the beam after these games and write something about it, because I keep noticing these developments, not to go down this rabbit hole, but recently there and this is like, feels like a Woodstock type of thing, like there's a fairly strong smell of little sticky stuff out there where it's like, man, like, are people really like coming out like it's a spiritual moment and staring at the beam and the kids, but it's all like, it's all good, like kids are out there and nobody looks, for one, sounded like the old guy in the room, nobody's looking at their phone, they're only using their phone to take a picture, take a video of the beam, but people are looking up, people are loving it. That part has been fun to watch.